a day every year, and she likes it, and I get a tax write-off.
There you go.
Well, I haven't binged, but I'm a Masterpiece kind of fan.
Oh, you know, I just started watching Poldark. I've never watched it before.
Oh,
it's stunning, absolutely stunning.
It's a wonderful period piece. It's one of the strongest use of landscape as a character that I think I've ever seen in anything on TV. It's pretty
absolutely stunning.
Yeah, Poldark is great. That's a great series.
So it looks like we might have to have another topic for Global Perspectives Institute. I'm hearing all of this excitement.
What are you watching?
I'm going to take the opportunity to welcome everyone to Global Ties Alabama's weekly Global Perspectives Institute. I'm really delighted to have so many of my colleagues from academia with us today. And I'm especially proud because the Global Perspectives Institute actually started 10 years ago because of a partnership with UAH, and now this program has expanded to college campuses throughout the state of Alabama. You know, there's been recent discussion in Washington, D.C. coming out of the White House that perhaps we should reconsider the status of our international students and maybe even rescind their student visas. Well, the minute we heard that, it caused an uproar among the Global Ties US network, and I'm certain among the universities that are represented today. And so we knew that it would be incredibly important to have a session, and we've entitled it, Why Alabama Should Retain International Students. We realize that the average person in the US doesn't realize the tremendous economic impact that international students have on our communities locally, statewide, and nationally. And so we wanted to bring together the professionals who work with international students in academia every day. We also have a wonderful board member, Al Allenbach, who's a retired Air Force colonel. And I'll just give you a little tidbit. He was talking about his wife's birthday, but the Allenbachs, he and Jean Charbonneau, both are a host family for Global Ties Alabama when we have international visitors. And so to be in the home, I had dinner with them when we hosted the 2020 International Woman of Courage. And to be in a home with two colonels of both genders, I was like, okay, this is very different. So we're delighted that he could take time today. He is also working with Aviation Business Development, which works with the Airport Planning and Engineering Group at Goodwin Mills and Kaywood. They were just in a strategic planning session that he was able to get out of in order to serve as today's moderator. So we're delighted, and we're thankful to have all of you from across the state. I'm seeing names who have joined us who are also part of the academic community. So feel free if you have questions or comments that you want to add, please feel free to use the chat button. But right now I'll turn it over to Colonel Al Allenbach.
All right, thank you so much, Jackie. Just a little bit of housekeeping. If everybody would go to mute, that would be great. We're going to finish this up at 13:45, and to lead off, you know, there's over a million, just over a million international students in the U.S. right now. They were threatened a few months ago to be sent back, but that was, we managed to work through that. And I'm representing Troy University, where we have a very aggressive international program. About 4.5% of our students, or 1,000 of them, are internationals. I had a pleasure of teaching one young lady from China last semester. So it's very, very interesting. They're very important to us. What I'd like to do, though, is to get things rolling, is to have our panel members normally would just go. I would normally just use, you know, the method of alphabetization, but I'm going to defer to Gender and Dr. Pam Little from Alabama A&M. Would you just briefly talk to us about your qualifications and what you do there and the situation internationally at your school?
Certainly. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Pamela Little, Executive Director of Community College Relations and Global Initiatives at Alabama A&M University here in Huntsville. I started at the university in February of 2020, so just a little bit before COVID hit. My role is to work with our transfer students for admissions into the university along with our international students. So my office is the hub for international concerns, programming for those students, making sure that those students are remaining in status and up to date with those items that will keep them within status here in the US. Programming is a huge part of what I enjoy doing to make sure that our students feel welcome at the university and that they know they have a home away from home and that they are also aligned with individuals who can support them. So again, I'm Pamela Little from Alabama A&M University, Office of Community College Relations and Global Initiatives. Thank you all for having me today.
Hey, thank you very much, Pam. Is Dr. Bao from UAH?
No, sorry.
Dr. Dow is not going to be able to make it today, so he unfortunately had a conflict.
Okay, well, Dave, why don't you go ahead, Dr. Berkowitz, and talk a little bit about you and your.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I appreciate it very much. My name is David Berkowitz, and I happen to be the Dean of the Graduate School in International Services at the University of Alabama in Huntsville. And I know some of you, and I'm glad that you're here to listen to this important topic. International students, roughly, for that 360 student campus. And both faculty and student exchange. And for the most part are able to accomplish that in a variety of different ways. And we can talk about that a little bit later and some of the complications that come with that. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Jorge Bartholomew from Oakwood University. Tell us about yourself and about your program.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity. My name is Jorge Bartholomew. Currently, I'm serving as the director for the Career Services Center and the Student Employment Office. I've been doing immigration for about 25 years, and though I've been promoted because of those years of experience, the president has not relinquished me from being the PDSO. He's like, we got to train the new staff and allow them to catch up to where you are, and then we will consider you. We average about 100 international students on our campus. So currently I'm only working with the students that have returned. Our admissions and international student affairs office deal with the new students. So until I get them all trained and prepared and the president can relinquish me from work on campus and off campus are still coming through my office.
25 international partners, and kind of finding a way to offer the world to our little campus here in West Alabama, and certainly try to bring the world to the campus itself. So it's kind of our goal and where we are, and hope to expand upon that.
Thank you. Well, it's very clear that international students have quite an impact, economically, and of course educationally. And I guess what I would like for the panel to comment on is the central question. I mean, why should Alabama retain international students? David, Dave, well, go ahead and give us your thoughts on that.
Well, thank you, Al. I'll start in here. You know, it is important that we retain and continue to retain and have international students. For the state of Alabama, international students contribute about $315 million to the economy. They roughly 3,200 jobs, and we have about almost 10,000 international students enrolled, although my guess is that number will go down just because of the inability to travel here this semester. And so that becomes an important part. Even each one of our universities, and even though Mark indicated that West Alabama is in its kind of initial stages and growing and so forth, each of us have these students that come to us. Not only are they good and support our economy, but they are great to have in the classroom. They bring an extra added level of diversity, an extra added level of complexity to the classroom. And so it really challenges not only their students and their colleagues, but it also challenges our faculty, and it challenges our staff, because we really need to pay attention to the variety of different things that occur. So international students and having international students as a part of our world really provides us with an opportunity to gain and learn and understand everything that goes on around the world, but it also provides great diversity, and it provides a wonderful challenge to all of our faculty as they prepare their classes. And the final point that I want to make, our university is a little bit unique in the sense that we are a premier research university, and as a heavy research intensive university, the international students oftentimes occupy an important role in that process. They're able to work on a variety of research projects, and they're able to put, especially our graduate students, are able to come in and do their master's and PhD work. And ultimately, those jobs that they end up leaving with are higher paying jobs, better jobs for our economy, and are highly skilled jobs. And our students go on and do wonderful things, whether it's working here in Huntsville at a place like Hudson Alpha, or if it's working at a place like Intel, or a place like NVIDIA, or any of the other commercial companies that we see in town.
Yeah, Huntsville clearly, with its high-tech and research components, is clearly a magnet, I would think, for international students. Dr. Little, your thoughts?
Certainly. To mirror what David said about the importance of the international students at the universities and the colleges as well, it helps to diversify our universities, our campuses, also our classrooms. When we think about our students and how our domestic students benefit from the interaction with the international students, for most of them, college may be the first opportunity or the first time that they've interacted with individuals outside of their norm, students from a different culture, students who have different perspectives of how the world is shaped. And with those opportunities for our domestic students to collaborate and to meet with our international students, it helps to prepare them for the global world. So academically, we want to prepare our students to be able to advance and to challenge themselves in a global economy. And working alongside international students and having them in the classroom is just one of those many ways that can happen. So it's very important for us as educators and as professionals to affirm with the U.S. and to communicate globally the importance of our international students, also academically, economically, as well as in our economy business-wise. As David mentioned, you do see a lot of our international students moving forward for graduate programs or professional programs. And from there, they develop companies that the U.S. can benefit from. And they're also our ambassadors when they go back to their home country as relates to higher education and the education they received within the U.S. So it's very important that we're able to maintain and retain our international students within the U.S.
Thank you.
Just for economic reasons, but because of the advancement that they bring in knowledge.
All right, thank you very much. Dr. Davis, how's it look from West Alabama?
I can't begin to describe the impact the international students have had on not only our university, but the community. I mean, until this group of international students started coming to us in cohorts, the idea and the example of shooting for top 10 university grad schools was not an option. It just wasn't even on the radar for most of our students. And we get students that come here and are off to University of Chicago, to Johns Hopkins, to Monash in Australia. These options opened up as our international students came in. And then you add cohorts of Chinese students, of Saudi students, of students from Europe, from Africa, and to West Alabama, to Livingston. And it's a massive impact on the community. They've been embraced greatly. Certainly, there were initial experiences to have everybody on campus and the community learn about each other, but I think we went about it a very progressive way, and because of that, Little Livingston has an international culture to it, if you will. I know it's a bit different this year, but in most years, the culture of the community has changed dramatically from 10 years ago. So again, I can't begin to tell you the impact on our campus, our students, our faculty, and the community.
Thank you. Jorge, how does this look from the perspective of a school like Oakwood University? And Jorge, did you able to hear me about Oakwood? Well, I'll tell you what, it seems like a ringing endorsement that we want to retain these students, that they're very, very important to us. What about thoughts on, let's say this issue comes up again, or the students are threatened? What are the possibility or possible avenues of approach to get that turned around? Dave, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I do. Of course, we're members of the Council of Graduate Schools, and of course, they are a strong advocate for international students, very specifically in our graduate programs. So they are in Washington, they're able to lobby, they're able to work with not only our senators, but of course, senators across the country. They're able to work with representatives across the country to make sure that we understand what the legislation looks like and how we can help people understand the value that international students deliver to us. Now, the other part of that is that, of course, we can always work towards our own messaging about how international students enhance not only the experience on campus, the experience in our communities, and of course, the research that they're doing. At UAH, for example, many of our students are involved in the EPSCoR research projects that are funded by the state of Alabama. And of course, part of the commitment that students try to make during that process is to stay in Alabama. So what they want is for students to stay in the state of Alabama, become future educators in the state of Alabama, especially if they're completing their PhDs, and then ultimately allow those students to expand their experience. And I think Pamela mentioned that, you know, they're great ambassadors, and they're wonderful people to go back to their home country. They come and solicit students to come to our university. And I think that's such a critical, important thing. So whenever we try and think about a plan, I personally work closely with embassies in Washington. I want to make sure that they understand who we are and how students should come to our university, why they should come to our university. And the embassies that I have visited over the years have been extremely strong in supporting us. And so they will do a lot of legwork so that we can figure out which students are a good fit for our university. And then we have to work with our own representatives, our own senators, our own state representatives, to make sure they understand and provide them with clear value structure so they understand the value that those international students bring.
Thank you. Jorge, we were talking about the value of these international students. Could you give us a perspective from Oakwood?
It's similar to Dr. Berkowitz at UAH. Our students have played such a powerful role when they go back to their various countries, where they have been our ambassadors, including at the American Embassy and Consulate. Oakwood University has a recognition now, and because of the success that the students have taken back to their homeland, we have been able to recruit more. Some of them, when we asked them, you know, how did you hear about Oakwood? Well, you know, my friend who is a friend of so-and-so, or we've had one of our choirs there, Orleans, very well known, have gone to some of these countries, and the students have been the best ambassadors in bringing other students back to our campus. And to be able to go back and see the success that the students have had in the United States, and to be able to apply the skills, the educational background, and the experiences back into their home country has been very impactful. So for us, we try to make sure that we do everything that we possibly can to help these students be able to successfully be in the United States, so that when it's time for them to return, they're able to do so successfully.
Thank you. One of my career Air Force opportunities was to be the commander at the Maxwell Air Force Base, which is the Leadership and Education Center of the Air Force, Air University. And we have the International Officers School. And at any given year, we have about 450 officers from 60 some countries around the world with their families, most of them here in Montgomery. And the ones that get to the War College, which is the senior service school level, do exactly what you said. They go back to their countries, and in many cases end up running the chief of staff of their Air Force, or even in the politics, and become very successful in their own countries. Pamela, back to our question about ways to influence decision makers to support international students. Do you have thoughts on that from Texas or from Alabama A?
Yeah, certainly. It goes back to the way that we communicate and the message that we share. How do we value our international students? Not just what do they bring to the university, but also what is that the university is pouring into those students, and how do those students in turn use that to help promote the universities and the colleges later. And I'll go back to my statement about ambassadors for our variety of universities and colleges. When we have international students that come to our campuses, most of them are green to the US. They have no idea of what to expect when they get here, or they have very little knowledge of the city that they're coming to. So they're looking for maybe host families or individuals who can assist them to navigate through the various processes, to learn our different cultural differences, what those things look like for them. So the way that we communicate how we value our international students and what they can do for our university has to be communicated in a way where the decision makers and those who are able to help us move forward and keeping those international students, that has to be done in a way where each university represented here can benefit from that. So I would go back to our communication, how important it is for us to have those students on our campus, the benefit that we add to them as well as what they bring to our universities.
Thank you. Mark, your thoughts on this subject?
Certainly, as I've stated before, the impact that the students have not only on our university, the students that are local to here, and then the community is tangible. And taking that and making sure policymakers are aware of the impact that these students have in a micro global sense on our community, and then how that can spread out to other places and affect students, not only international students leaving and having a more global perspective, but again, as everyone else has said, they go back and talk to their friends and family, and then our own travels, and meeting people along the way and explaining the impact that it has on our community and the importance of that, whether it's the consul generals that are supporting it out of Atlanta or out of Houston, or going out to the consulates themselves overseas and explaining the benefits that it provides for our community, having these students come out. All of these have worked for us. All of these, certainly one of our champions is the honorary consul general to Japan, Mr. Mark Jackson, but those ties beyond Mr. Jackson certainly have helped shape how important these students are, not only to UWA, but our community and our region and the state. So I think continuing that process to build those relationships with those policymakers and those who can influence policymakers has been our best way to go about it, and hopefully we can continue that.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a good perspective. I'm going to throw this out to the group. So what could GTA do, Global Ties Alabama? What role could they play to facilitate keeping international students in the state? Anybody?
I'll say, for one, to continue to have platforms like what we're doing today, bringing together university representatives and professionals out of the International Studies Department together to talk about the importance of international students and how our universities benefit from them. Continuing with these webinar series, opening them up maybe even beyond the state of Alabama, or have individuals to come in and serve as guest speakers who are not necessarily tied to Global Ties or to a particular university, but who understands the importance of international students and higher education for that. So I would say continue to do what we're doing today.
One of the other things too that will help is the organization introducing Alabama to our international students. You know, for some reason, Alabama does not have a positive image outside of Alabama, except for football. One of the challenges that we have in getting individuals to Alabama is the negative connotation that the state has outside of football. That I think if we need to change that image, and the best people that can do it are the Alabamians themselves.
Al, this is Jackie Scheit from Global Ties Alabama. I'd like to also respond, and I appreciate Jorge being transparent with his question, with his answer. We recognized that there needed to be an opportunity to introduce the New South to our international students. And about 3 years ago, Global Ties Alabama began a program where we will invite students. We started it here in the Huntsville area. We take international students from any of the 3 major universities. It's an opportunity for them to meet one another. It's an opportunity for them to get off of campus. And we spend a half a day with them, introducing them to the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. They typically have lunch, meeting with a member of the Huntsville City Council or the Multicultural Affairs Director. And they also go on a tour of the Huntsville-Madison County area. It's amazing the reaction that the students have when they participate in this initiative. And just at the time of COVID, it was offered to the students at Troy University because many of them did not return home. And so we had invited them to come north and experience the Space and Rocket Center. So we do think that that's an incredibly important opportunity. Also, Global Ties Alabama works with the Global U.S. Alliance, and we are on their advisory committee. They have a lot of advocacy work that they do with elected officials, both at the state level and federal level. And we think that those advocacy, both seminars, letter writing campaigns, and conversations are incredibly important. And we appreciate those of you who participate with us. There are a couple of people on the call, Al. I will just ask that we include for a response Becky Duckett. Becky has been a partner of Global Ties Alabama representing the Gadsden State Community College. And she's done some really interesting work with international students. So Becky, would you share the impact that your international students have had on the Gadsden area? And then of course we have Dr. Charles Nash, who's about to retire, I think, from being Vice Chancellor at UA. And we'd like for him to share about the experience that UA specifically has with its international students. Becky?
Yeah. Thank you, Jackie. I am Director of International Programs at Gadsden State, and I'm also Director of the Alabama Language Institute. And I think the community college perspective in this is very significant. Most people don't realize this, but Gadsden State, in the small town and region that it's in, has had international programming for more than 50 years. In that 50 years, we've had well over 6,000 students from 140 different countries pass through our classrooms. Some come for intensive English and then stay. Many of them start with us for economic reasons. Clearly, the community college system is less expensive. They can get a good start. They can get a good GPA and then transfer to some of the institutions represented here. In my tenure of the last 5 years, we've sent one of our stars down to Troy. Al, you may know Anirban, and he began with us here, and we're very proud of that tradition. But it is, I'm fairly new to the program, and I'm also new to Alabama. I'm a Southerner, obviously, you can tell by listening to me. But this program here has been a remarkable opportunity for one-on-one international diplomacy. Because students brush elbows here, not just with our US students and make that impact there, but they brush elbows with students from all over, and often places that don't really like one another at home. And so the strength of what happens here at that personal level in a small environment with community involvement does, I echo what I heard others saying, that it does send the students back to their countries as our diplomats in, to some extent, and they become goodwill ambassadors. Our program, having been here this long, frequently sees extended family members and even children of former students coming back to us. And these connections are so strong that we, of course, acknowledge all of the benefits everyone else has said. But I did recently, in one of my research efforts to promote what we're doing here and make sure that we keep alive, I found an article from Bloomberg that was so dated a little, but here at Gadsden State, we're banking on further impact that was elucidated here in this article. And among the things that they discovered that U.S. students were able to do as a result of interacting was to question their own beliefs and values, acquire new skills and knowledge independently, formulate creative ideas, integrate ideas and information, achieve quantitative abilities, understand the role of science and technology in society, and gain in-depth knowledge in a specific field. I found it very interesting that Duke research had discovered that these values that we want all of our students to have are enhanced by the presence of international students. And the community here has welcomed our students for 5 decades. And each year, when we don't have COVID, we have an international festival. And I think it's testimony to that beautiful diplomatic approach that 300 to 500 people from our small community of Gadsden come to the campus to meet with those students, get to know them, learn about their countries, watch them perform talent or ability from their countries. And I think that we have to get that message out. You know, you're talking about talking to stakeholders. Of course, that's very important, but I think we need to put the personal face on it and show the impact that this has on our communities. We're rural. We're community college. We're different from all the others you've heard from, but in our congressional district, students still bring over $1.5 million into our economy each year until we see what COVID's done. Those numbers will be coming out soon, but we all are here because we know it's valuable. But I think in our presentation to others and our reaching out to elected officials, we have to put a personal face on it, not just of what the impact is to our communities economically, but what the impact is to global interaction and our international students as well, because what they get here, they take with them. And that is the greatest thing that I believe I can do in my profession and my place, is to demonstrate a kindness and build relationships that will travel back to those countries all over the world where our students come from, and ultimately build good relations and value from both sides for what we gain in these interactions.
I have a quick question. So you're with a community college. These are international students coming in for what type of education or training? What are they looking for?
They come for a lot of different reasons. Many of them start with us for the intensive English program. It is the oldest one in the state of Alabama. Sorry to tell you guys at the universities, we beat you to it. We have been doing intensive English here for 47 years. And so many of the students come here to get strong English skills so that they can then move successfully into the academic system. Many of them come for English, discover they love Gadsden, and they're saving money here. And so they decide to stay and get an associate's degree. And then they have a basis for transfer to other institutions where they have a proven track record and they've saved money so they can afford a more expensive university. Many times students will come who are already finished with their degrees. For instance, in Equatorial Guinea, we have a very good relationship with a law firm there that sends its promising new members of their institution. They send them here to improve their English skills. And occasionally they will then go on and do some study at law schools here in the U.S. just to get more information about U.S. law. Some come already having English. They come from Nigeria, other countries where English is their first language. They come because their parents came before them, and particularly Nigeria, they finish high school at age 16, which is quite young to travel abroad, and the parents trust Gadsden State as a fairly safe community. We do have a dormitory and cafeteria on campus, and so they know that we will love and take care of their students, their children while they're here, and then they transfer on to schools where they go on to do great things. So many of them come just because we're the only one they can afford. Others come because they know we have a good reputation for helping them make the transition and succeed in their further studies here. And some come for family connections. And they find us for a lot of reasons. We really don't know how the first international student found us. I just know that back in the late 1960s, Japanese student wandered helplessly around campus trying to take classes. And the administration recognized this and immediately stepped up to help this young woman. She was here. We had to do something to help her. And that's how the Alabama Language Institute was born. So.
That's very, very interesting. Charles, your perspective on international students.
Yes, thank you very much. Can you hear me all?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Jackie. Jackie called me out. I hadn't planned to say anything. I was the listener today, but Jackie does that to me sometimes. I wanted to just, everything that has been said, I've worked with David Berkowitz for years and years and years as a colleague working on matters of international education and graduate education. And so what David has said, I could say ditto, probably for the University of Alabama and the University of Alabama at Birmingham. I have worked in the system office for all three of our campuses for 28 years until July 31st, Jackie, and I'm 2 weeks into retirement now, and so I'm trying to figure out what life is as a retired educator in Alabama. And so ask me a year from now and I'll tell you how it's been going. But I want to just point out two things. The experience that we had, and especially I'll focus a little bit here in Tuscaloosa area, the focus that we had when Mercedes chose Alabama as its home for its first car development plant outside of Germany was a significant around Gadsden trying to figure out where to take some classes. We had a company here in town that was a Japanese company that really was the forerunner to all of our international companies in this part of the state. And so it was not Mercedes that really started the emphasis on international education in West Alabama. It actually was a Japanese company. And so I made 5 trips to Germany after Mercedes decided that it wanted to have its car manufacturer here. And part of the experience was to do some of what I think, who was it, Jorge or someone, who talked about the image that Alabama doesn't have, the good image that we hoped Alabama would have. And much of those trips that I spent going back and forth to Germany was to help folk in Germany, families and children and wives and spouses and others of those Germans who were going to come here to be a part of the Mercedes experience, to help them know the real Alabama, the experience of growing up families and working, the hardworking people of Alabama that they would encounter then once they came here. And so it was revealing to help to understand what they thought of us, much of which they had gotten from movies, by the way, I think, and what we were like here. And just one quick tidbit, and I'll stop talking, Al. They saw some of the employees who were coming from Germany saw the high school that was Central High School, the big high school in Tuscaloosa, and it had a fence around it with barbed wire at the top. I say barbed wire, it was probably not barbed wire, but some sort of stickly barbed wire at the top. And they thought it, when they saw it, was a jail. We couldn't wait to take that fence down. And so I think what the experience not only of students who come, but employees who come in, and I have a question in the chat for the rest of you, are we also recruiting, bringing here faculty and staff, maybe from the same countries where we're recruiting our students, so that they help in this exchange and this intercultural relationship that we're trying to build globally? I hope we are doing both those things. But yes, we have to have the international experience, not only for their benefit, but for our benefit as well.
Thank you for that perspective and that question. We are right up against our 45 minutes allocated time, but I'd like to acknowledge Frances Ackridge, City Council from Huntsville. Ma'am, thank you so much. Do you have any comments you'd like to make about international students in Huntsville?
Well, I know it's critical. We have a banner. Last time I looked, it still says we are building an inclusive community. And we need to do that intentionally. And having come from a military family background, I know from experience how it expanded my worldview, how it's part of why I used to have a bumper sticker that said, "Don't believe everything you think." So, because we do get stuck in our bubbles, we are prone to confirmation bias, and knowing people from different countries expands your ability to just even tell a story. For example, the first time I went to Turkey, and I was actually the only time, and of course I was warned that it would be different in some places. Well, I found it's quite different throughout the country, in different parts of the country. But it's these individual conversations that can make a big difference in the way we promote international students coming to our state. The individual stories that might sound like the one I learned, I said to was a shopkeeper, and I said, "Is this your store?" And he said, "I am the steward. This is God's store." You know, so the fact that he said it right away opened my eyes to his priorities. I asked about why all the stray dogs and stray cats looked healthy. And he said, "Muhammad told us to take care of these creatures also." And so I had a new respect for his religion just from that conversation. I wasn't just going to adopt it, but it made me less afraid while I was there. So I'm very grateful that Global Ties exists, that I'm grateful for this opportunity to learn about everybody's programs within your own colleges. It is critical for our own country to have this exchange of ideas and understanding. And I'm grateful for everyone's work that's here today.
Well, thank you very much. Where were you stationed in Turkey?
Well, that was a pleasure trip as an adult. My father was also in the Air Force, and so our own tour of duty was in Japan at Fuchu Air Force Base. We lived off base for a year and a half. It was very, very cold, and we had earthquakes, and I learned, you know, I saw eels in a barrel and clams squirting, and it just, didn't Mark Twain say that travel is, someone help me. What did Mark Twain say about traveling? It's the one thing you need to erase bigotry or racism. So as a child, I was lucky that I was in a military family and saw another country. Each time we moved, it's a slightly different culture. And so I'm just, I'm glad to be doing what I do. I love my job. I love serving in a capacity as a guardian of our monies and a guardian of our neighbors and neighborhoods. So thank you very much for acknowledging me, Colonel.
Yeah, well, thank you, ma'am, very much for participating today. Jackie, it's very clear to me that we have a strong consensus that we need to retain and even expand our international students. This is a very unique group. I'd like to suggest that perhaps we have further discussions on this topic. I'd like to delve more into Charles's question, but because of our time, I'm going to yield back to you and thank everyone for participating today.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Al, and thank you to everyone, both the panelists as well as our audience members. Becky and Charles, thank you for adding, and certainly Councilwoman Ackridge, who I've already asked to be on her calendar because we have lots to chat about. I think you will, Al, get to see Dr. Nash next week, so I'll invite everyone to join our GPI next week, Serving Across Borders. We have many of our residents throughout the state who not only are volunteers within the state of Alabama, but also across the U.S. borders, and we'd like to feature them as well. Now, Councilwoman Ackridge has given me a assignment, And I can't do that assignment without all of you. And so she's asked if GTA could gather testimonies of students, international students who have impacted the lives of our local students. And those will be testimonies that we will both add to our newsletter, probably also our website. She's specifically said Instagram, so I know that she understands generational diversity as well. And so the work continues. And again, we're just so thankful for all of you joining us today. And we look forward to continuing our partnerships. I see a few of our partners who are on the call as well. Thank you so much for supporting Global Ties Alabama and our Global Perspectives Institute. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful week.
Thank you.